There's a certain kind of night men don't really talk about. The kind where it's 3 a.m., the room is dark, the phone screen is finally black, and you're on your back staring at the ceiling, replaying every almost relationship you've ever had instead of sleeping. You scroll through old messages you never send, hover over names you don't tap, and listen to the silence between your own breaths. It's quiet outside, but your head is loud. On paper, you're fine. During the day, you crack jokes with friends, you show up to work, you lift, you pay bills, you keep moving. People might even say you're confident, that you seem put together. And in a way, you are. You've learned how to be useful, how to be reliable, how to be the one who fixes things. But when the night finally strips all that away, when it's just you and the dark, there's this hollow ache that shows up in your chest. The hardest part is how familiar it feels. It's not just about being lonely. It's this deeper feeling of being unchosen. Like life is one long picking of teams and you keep watching everyone else get called first. Friends getting married, starting families, posting anniversaries and baby photos, while you're still here, scrolling, pretending you're not counting how many times you've been almost loved. You tell yourself you're okay being alone, that there's nothing wrong with waiting, but some nights you can't shake the question, what if no one ever picks you? And that's when your mind starts spiraling. Is it because you're too quiet? Too much? Not enough? You look back at the times you were the good listener, the safe place, the one she cried to about someone else. And you remember being the late night call, the emotional support, the "you're such a good guy" speech, followed by "I'm just not ready." You start to wonder if you're only valuable when you're useful, when you're strong, when you're the one holding everyone else together. What scares me most, and maybe you feel this too, is the question underneath all of that. If you stopped performing, would anyone stay? If you weren't funny, or helpful, or the one paying, fixing, driving, reassuring, would anyone still choose you? If you couldn't be the rock, if you let yourself be soft, would anyone call you back? Or would the room just get quieter? Men are told to be providers, protectors, problem solvers. We're told to toughen up, not to need too much, not to ask for tenderness. So you learn to swallow your loneliness, to turn it into work, into muscles, into achievements. But late at night, when no one is watching, that doesn't make you weak. It just means you're human. Wanting love, wanting to be held, wanting to feel chosen. There's nothing wrong with that. In this video, I'm not going to rush past that ache or shame you for it. We're going to sit with it. We're going to name it, trace where it came from, and talk about why so many men carry this secret fear of being unlovable. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. And you're not the only one lying awake at 3 a.m., wondering if you'll ever be loved for who you are when you finally put everything down. It's not just loneliness. It's feeling unchosen. So when I talk about you lying awake at 3 a.m., I don't just mean you're alone in a bed. I mean you're alone in a world that seems to be pairing off in front of you. While you stand there holding your own hands, pretending it doesn't sting, it's not just about not having plans on a Friday night. It's watching your group chat slowly turn into wedding photos, baby announcements, anniversary dinners. It's sitting at another reception table, clapping for another first dance, while a quiet part of you whispers, "What's wrong with me that no one has ever looked at me that way?" Not because you hate love, but because you're starting to wonder if love has quietly decided you're unchosen. The hardest part is how patterned it starts to feel. At first, it's one almost relationship that fizzles when she isn't ready for anything serious. Then it's a situationship where you give consistency, and she gives you late-night texts and vague promises. Then you're the backup option, and the safe shoulder she cries on before going back to the man who doesn't really see her. Once or twice, you can call it bad timing. The 5th time, the 10th time, what scares me most is how easy it is to call it proof. You start scrolling through social media and it's a highlight reel of everything you don't have. Engagement rings in soft lighting. Airport photos with matching passports. Captions about my person, my rock, my home. And you're there on your couch, phone glowing in the dark, feeling like you're behind glass, watching other people live the life you thought you were training for. You don't just feel alone, you feel unchosen, as if there's a list somewhere and your name never got printed. Nights are dangerous because the noise drops and the questions get louder. Is it my face? My body? My bank account? Am I too quiet? Too much? Not enough? You don't stop believing in love. You stop believing it wants you. And slowly the fear shifts from, this is a rough season, to, what if this is just my life? Not a phase, not a chapter, just permanent loneliness dressed up as independence. There's nothing wrong with wanting someone to pick you. That doesn't make you weak, needy, or less of a man. It just means you're human, built for connection in a world that told you to be self-sufficient and stoic, while everyone else posted couple selfies. But when enough people leave, or never quite choose you fully, a darker question starts forming in the silence. What if it's not that you don't try hard enough, or text right, or look the part? What if the real problem is quieter and crueler? The fear that at your core, you're simply not someone people stay for. And what do you even do with a fear like that? When "why am I alone" becomes "what's wrong with me?" That's where the question starts to bend. At first, it's simple, almost practical. Maybe it's timing. Maybe it's the apps. Maybe you're just busy right now. You tell yourself it's the city you live in, the circles you move in, the way modern dating feels more like shopping than choosing. It's not just about you, you say. It's the culture. It's the moment. It's everything else. But then there's the night. The part after the scrolling, after the gym, after the work emails, when the room goes quiet and the ceiling is the only thing looking back at you. You lie there in the dark, phone face down, and your mind starts replaying scenes you didn't ask to watch again. In that first date where the conversation died and you felt the panic in your chest. The text you sent and then overanalyzed for 3 days. The moment you wanted to say, "Please don't go," and stayed silent instead. You start doing this private investigation on yourself. Was I too quiet? Too intense? Not attractive enough? Too emotional? Not emotional enough? Not successful enough to be worth choosing? The hardest part is how reasonable those questions sound at 2 a.m. They don't feel dramatic. They feel logical, evidence-based. They line up every person who left and ask you to find the common denominator, and the only thing standing there is you. Some nights, you scroll through old messages looking for the exact word where you went wrong. Other nights, you replay her tone when she said, "You're such a good guy." And somehow, it felt more like a door closing than an invitation in. You remember the matches that faded, the situationships that never became relationships, the way friends got engaged while you perfected being the safe option, but not the chosen one. And slowly, without announcing itself, the question shifts from, why am I alone, to, what's wrong with me? What scares me most is how quietly that shift happens. How a man who can carry everyone else's weight can't admit he's carrying this. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be loved in return. That doesn't make you weak or needy or less of a man. It just means you're human and you're tired of being unchosen. The spiral you fall into, it isn't proof that the harsh thoughts are true. It's a response to impact, to years of being told to toughen up and to not need reassurance, to never say, I feel unlovable, out loud. When enough experiences echo the same emptiness back at you, your brain starts writing a story to make sense of it. Not because you lack self-love in theory, but because you crave mutual love in practice. The kind of love that looks you in the eye, sees all the parts you've questioned, and still says, I'm not going anywhere. And when you haven't met that yet, the nights get louder. But this isn't the end of the story. It's just the part where you start asking different questions about yourself and about the kind of love you actually deserve to wait for. Grundregeln, the secret rules men were given about being lovable, so when the nights get louder, when the question of, will I ever be chosen, keeps circling in the silence, most men don't just hear it as a question about dating. They hear it as an exam they've been secretly sitting since childhood. An exam on being a man, on being lovable, on being worth staying for. Because there was a curriculum, even if no one called it that. Be strong. Don't cry. Don't need too much. Make money. Be impressive. Be funny. Be useful. Then maybe you'll be worth loving. Not just worth respecting. Worth loving. You learn it from a father who only really lit up when you scored, won, achieved, pushed through pain without complaining. You learn it from a mother who was so overwhelmed she didn't have much softness left. So you tried not to add to her load by having needs of your own. On the playground, you learn it again. The first time you cried and someone laughed. The first time you said, that hurt, and they called you weak. By 5, 6, 7 years old, a lot of boys have already been told, directly or indirectly, that tears are wrong, that tenderness is dangerous. Research even shows many boys are discouraged from crying by that age, and it doesn't just disappear. It sinks in. It becomes a rule you carry into every room. The hardest part is, it's not just about behavior. It becomes about identity. Not, I cried, but I am wrong for needing comfort. Not, they were unkind, but I was stupid for expecting gentleness. So you start editing yourself. You turn the volume down on anything that looks needy, scared, or soft. And you turn the volume up on whatever looks impressive enough to keep you from being unchosen. Love slowly turns into a performance. You walk into dates, friendships, even family dinners as a character you've rehearsed. The capable one, the funny one, the unbothered one. You show the highlight reel, your work ethic, your self-control, your ability to be fine alone, and what scares me most is how easy it is to forget there's a real person under that role. A human who still wants to be held without having to earn it. That doesn't make you fake. It just means you were trained. Trained to believe that if someone ever saw the part of you that is lonely or clingy or afraid of being left, they would leave faster. So you keep those parts in the dark and hope someone falls in love with the costume. Pattern interrupt for a second. When did you first learn that needing love was something to hide? Not in theory. What exact moment, what room, whose face? Let yourself go there for a breath. You're not behind. And you're not forgotten. You're just starting to see the script you were handed, so the next part of your story can be written differently. The quiet boy who learned to go. Silent. Maybe it started in a small, ordinary room. No dramatic music, no big speech. Just a boy on a living room floor, knees scraped from the driveway, tears coming faster than he can hide them. He reaches for comfort without thinking, because that's what small humans do before they learn the rules. And then it lands. Stop crying. Be a man. No one likes a crybaby. Sometimes it's a father saying it, eyes already back on the TV. Sometimes it's a mother, exhausted and scared that the world will eat him alive if he stays this soft. Sometimes it's an older brother or a coach on the field when he misses the winning shot and his throat burns from trying not to sob. The words change, but the message doesn't. Your hurt is inconvenient. Your tears are embarrassing. Your need makes people pull away. The hardest part is how quickly he believes them, because he doesn't just hear, "Stop crying." He hears, "If you show you're hurt, you'll be mocked. If you show you're alone, you'll be left even more alone." So he makes a quiet decision that no one claps for, but it shapes everything. He swallows the lump in his throat. He laughs when he wants to cry. He says, "I'm fine," before anyone even asks. Not because he stops feeling, but because feeling out loud starts to feel wrong. He skins his knee and jokes about it. He gets picked last and shrugs. Whatever. He watches his dad walk past him, past his drawings, past his questions, and tells himself, it's not a big deal. It's not just about one harsh sentence. It's the long, slow absence that follows. The lack of warmth. The missing, "How are you, really?" The way nobody seems curious about his inner world. People talk about father wounds and it sounds dramatic, but most of the time it's quiet. No bruises. Just a dad who's always at work, or always on his phone, or always emotionally somewhere else. A man who provides a roof and food, but not softness, not presence, not the feeling of being chosen just for existing. That doesn't make him a monster. It just means the boy learns, again and again, that love in this house doesn't include listening to his feelings. Fast forward, and that boy is a man, standing in a doorway as someone he loves packs a bag. His chest aches, his stomach drops. His whole body wants to say, "Well, please don't leave. I miss you already. I feel so alone." But the words get stuck in the same place his childhood tears used to live. They feel dangerous, childish, shameful. What scares me most is how many men can lift 300 pounds at the gym, but cannot lift their eyes to say, "I need you." So he says, "It's fine. Do what you want." He cracks a joke. He changes the subject. He acts unbothered and then lies awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering why love never seems to stay. Wondering if he's just unlovable, while having no idea that he was trained for years to never actually ask for love in a way someone could hear. Men are told there's nothing wrong with being strong, and that's true. But no one tells them there's nothing wrong with needing reassurance, or tenderness, or a hand on their back saying, "I'm here." You're not behind for struggling with this. You're not forgotten because no one ever showed you how. If you were never taught how to ask for love safely, how could you possibly believe you deserve it now? In the next part, I want to show you what happens when that quiet boy finally starts to question the rules he was given, and what love begins to look like when he does. Why men don't believe their need for love is allowed, and when that quiet boy starts to question the rules, he runs into something no one warned him about, the double bind. Be strong, be independent, don't need anyone, but also be open, be vulnerable, don't be emotionally unavailable. How are you supposed to win a game where every move is wrong? You're told real men don't need reassurance, but you're also told good partners communicate their feelings. And you're told to never chase, never care too much, but then scolded for being distant. Not soft, but not cold. Not clingy, but not detached. Am I too quiet? Too much? Not enough? The hardest part is, you start to believe there is no version of you that can need love and still be respected. So you push it down in the daylight, and it only leaks out at night. In the gym bathroom at 9 p.m., when you stare at yourself in the mirror and wonder, would anyone still choose me if I lost all this muscle? On the drive home after dropping her off, when you rehearse the words, "Please don't leave," and never say them out loud. And then, at 3 a.m., in the blue light of your phone, you finally crack. You type things into anonymous forums you'd never say with your real name attached. No one has ever asked me if I feel lovable. I don't know how to tell my girlfriend I'm scared she'll find someone better. I haven't hugged anyone in months. What scares me most is how many men whisper the same confession into the same darkness, thinking they're the only ones who feel this alone because the silent rules of masculinity punish tenderness long before you ever fall in love. You learn early that crying gets you mocked, asking for a hug gets you teased, saying, "I'm scared," gets you told to man up. Men who ask, "Do you still want me?" are called needy. Men who say, "Can you hold me?" are called weak. You watch stoicism get praised as maturity, and you start to believe that numbness is what being grown looks like. It's not just about self-love affirmations or learning to hype yourself up in the mirror. And you can repeat, "I am enough," 1,000 times, and still feel sick at the thought of saying, "I need you." Because this isn't about you failing to love yourself. It's about being told over and over that needing someone else's love makes you less of a man. That doesn't make you broken. It just means you were trained to survive by pretending you don't need what every human needs. There's nothing wrong with wanting a hand on your back when you're tired, or needing someone to say, "I'm glad you're here," after a long, empty day. That longing is not a malfunction. It's proof that under all the armor, you're still human, not a machine built to carry everyone else and ask for nothing. You're not behind for craving that warmth. You're not forgotten because you still hope for it. In the next part, and I want to talk about what happens when a man stops apologizing for that need and starts looking for love that doesn't punish him for having it. The self-doubt spiral. How men turn against themselves when a man finally lets himself want love out loud. Something strange starts happening in the background. Every unanswered text, every slow fade, every breakup stops being just an event and turns into evidence. Evidence for a case he's quietly building against himself. You know that feeling when you send a message and the hours stretch out into a kind of soft panic? Not full-blown terror, just that low hum under your skin. You check your phone, you tell yourself you're being dramatic, you put it down, and then you pick it up again. At some point, the question shifts from, "Did she see it?" to, "What did I do wrong?" And that's where the spiral really begins. The mind doesn't like silence. It hates not knowing. So when a situationship fades, or someone you were sure would stay suddenly doesn't, your brain starts pulling files. It's not just about what happened this week. It's every moment you've ever felt unchosen lining up behind it. You don't say, "She was inconsistent." You say, "I'm boring. I'm not attractive enough. I'm too needy. I'm too cold. I'm not successful enough. I'm just not the kind of guy women fall in love with. The hardest part is how reasonable those accusations can sound at 1 a.m. You replay every joke you made, wondering if you came off try hard. You replay every silence, wondering if you seemed uninterested. You replay every time you didn't make a move, and convinced that one hesitation ruined everything. Am I too quiet? Too much? Not enough? You become a detective in your own life, searching for the exact moment you disqualified yourself from being chosen. From the outside, it might look vain, even self-obsessed, to spend so much time thinking about your own attractiveness, your own messages, your own presence. But this spiral isn't about vanity. It's about survival. It's about trying to make chaos make sense. I'm unlovable hurts, but it feels coherent. I don't know why this keeps happening is a kind of free fall with no edges to hold on to. What scares me most is how quickly those late-night theories stop feeling optional. The more you rehearse them, the more they stop sounding like thoughts and start sounding like facts. You don't think, maybe I was awkward that night. You think, since I am awkward. You don't think, maybe she wasn't ready. You think, no one ever chooses me. That doesn't make you broken. It just means your brain has been using pain as proof for far too long. And once those stories harden, they don't stay in your dating life. They start bleeding into how you see your body, your work, your friendships, your future. There's nothing wrong with wanting answers, with wanting to know why love keeps slipping through your fingers. But if every answer you reach for cuts you a little deeper, something in you slowly erodes. In the next part, I want to talk about what happens when that erosion goes so far you don't just doubt you'll be loved. You start doubting you exist as someone worth meeting at all. When loneliness starts to rewrite who you think you are. This is where loneliness stops feeling like a season and starts feeling like a sentence. Not just, I haven't met the right person yet, but maybe I'm not someone people stay for. It doesn't happen in one bad night. It happens slowly, in 100 small ways you don't even notice at first. At the beginning, you can still blame timing. Wrong place, wrong person, wrong year. You tell yourself it's just circumstance. But month after month, year after year, when you keep watching other people get chosen while you're still going home alone, slowly it affects your worth. The absence of being chosen stops feeling random and starts feeling personal, like the world is quietly delivering a verdict about you. You don't stop believing in love. You stop believing it wants you. There's a difference. You can watch movies, go to weddings, scroll past couples on your feed, and genuinely think, love is real. I'm happy for them. And at the same time, there's this second voice whispering, just not for you, not in that way, not for long. The hardest part is you can sound logical about it. You call yourself realistic. You say you're just accepting how things are. But underneath that realism is grief you never got to cry out loud. For men, this gets reinforced in quiet, specific ways. No one asks if you feel lovable. They ask if you're working hard, if you're strong, if you're handling it. You're told not to need too much, not to be too emotional, not to complain about being unchosen. So you carry this question alone. If I stopped performing, if I stopped being useful, why would anyone still choose me? It's not just about wanting sex or attention. It's about wanting to be seen as human and still held. Over time, loneliness becomes heavier than silence. It's not just the absence of noise in your room at night. It's that weight on your chest when you sit on the edge of your bed and feel the world moving around you, but not toward you. Friends are getting married, having kids, posting anniversaries, and you're still staring at the same ceiling. You start to feel less like a person in the story and more like the background character who never gets a plot. That's when your identity starts to shift. I'm single right now quietly turns into, I'm the guy no one stays with. I haven't met my person yet turns into, I'm the friend, not the one people fall for. You don't say it out loud, but you move through rooms as if it's already proven. You pull back first so you don't have to watch them leave. You lower your standards so you can at least say someone wanted you, even if they never really saw you. That doesn't make you weak. It just means you've been trying to survive with the tools you were given. If this is where you are, it makes sense that you're tired. Not just tired of being alone, but tired of what being alone has started to say about you. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You're carrying years of unanswered questions on your back. In the next part, I want to talk about how you start putting some of that weight down without pretending you don't still want love. The mask. Performance as protection. At some point, putting the weight down starts with noticing what you've been carrying in the first place. Not the loneliness you can see, but the performance you've been running, so you don't have to feel it. The show you put on so no one ever gets close enough to ask, are you actually okay? Think about the funny friend, the man who is always on. He keeps the group chat alive, fills every silence with a story, a joke, a clever line. People say, you're the life of the party, and he smiles because that's the role. But watch him closely. He never really talks about himself. He never says, I'm scared, or I want more than this. He'll help everyone else flirt, but when it comes to his own needs, his own longing to be chosen, he turns it into another bit. And the hardest part is he's so good at entertaining that no one notices he never actually asks for what he really wants. Then there's the high-achieving one. The man whose calendar is full, whose title sounds impressive when it echoes in small talk. He learned early that love arrived when he brought home good grades, when he was useful, when he made someone proud. So now it's promotions, numbers, status, the next milestone. Not because he's greedy, but because somewhere inside, a little boy still believes, if I stop impressing them, they'll stop loving me. What scares me most is how normal that can look from the outside. Successful, stable, and quietly convinced that if the money disappeared, the affection would too. Over time, the performance stops being a habit and becomes a test. Every joke, every achievement, every act of toughness turns into this silent experiment. If I do everything right, and they still leave, then I'll know for sure I'm unlovable. Imagine the pressure that puts on every date, every text, every night you spend lying awake next to someone who doesn't really see you. It's not just about wanting to be loved. It's about trying to outrun the terror that maybe you were never enough without the show. And behind all of it, there's one small, stubborn question. If I stop performing, will I still be loved? If I'm not the funniest, the strongest, the most successful in the room, will anyone stay? There's nothing wrong with wanting to be admired or respected. That doesn't make you shallow or wrong or weak. It just means you were taught that being human wasn't sufficient on its own, so pattern interrupt. For a second, I want you to imagine dropping it. No jokes to fill the silence, no updates about work, No flexing, no pretending you're not lonely at night. Just you, as you are, without the mask. Who do you honestly believe would still choose you if you brought nothing but yourself? Whose presence would feel softer, not colder, in that kind of silence? If that question leaves you staring at a blank space, that doesn't mean you're unlovable. It means the performance has been running your life for so long that you don't even know who might love you without it. In the next part, I want to talk about what it looks like to slowly step off that stage, and how you begin to build a life where love isn't something you have to earn every single day. Modern dating, porn, Chand, the distorted mirror. Stepping off that stage would be easier if the world weren't full of new ones waiting for you. You delete the performance in your real life, and then you open your phone, and there it is, again. A smaller stage, but somehow harsher, because this time the audience doesn't even have to speak to reject you. On dating apps, your whole existence is turned into 6 photos, a height, and a sentence you rewrote 10 times to sound effortless. You sit there at night, thumb moving, watching faces blur into a kind of soft, endless loneliness. Every time you don't match, it's quiet. No message, no feedback. Just a left swipe that feels like a silent, "You're not enough. Not smart enough, not tall enough, not interesting enough." The hardest part is, it's not just about not getting a date, and it's about what your brain whispers. If they really saw me and still passed, what does that say about my chances of ever being chosen in real life? So you go somewhere safer. Porn doesn't ask you to be charming, doesn't care if you're anxious, doesn't notice the way your voice shakes when you say, "I want you." It offers predictable arousal without vulnerability, intensity without the risk of being seen and then unchosen. What scares me most is how quickly your body learns the pattern. Open a screen, feel a rush, close it, no rejection. No awkward silence after you share your feelings. No one pulling away when you finally let your guard down. It trains your brain to expect fireworks without effort, connection without courage, pleasure without the possibility of loss. And in between all of that, there's social media. And scroll long enough and you'll see everything you think you're missing. The fit bodies, the soft morning photos of couples making coffee together, the anniversary posts with paragraphs about my person, and I knew from the first moment. You look at your own life, your regular body, your quiet nights, your empty camera roll, and it feels wrong, almost inhuman, that no one is posting about you. You don't see the arguments, the doubt, the therapy sessions, the breakups. You just see highlight reels and start asking, why does love look easy for everyone but me? What am I doing so badly? Over time, those tiny moments add up. The unmatched profiles, the tabs you open in the dark, the couples you compare yourself to. It just means your brain is collecting evidence and not in your favor. You start to believe you are less desirable than other men, less interesting, less lovable. That doesn't make you weak or dramatic. It makes you human in a world that keeps grading you in silence. But if all these places are mirrors and the mirrors are distorted, what does that mean about the story you've been telling yourself about your own lovability? And if the story isn't true, then where do you go to learn a different one? The story's silence tells you about yourself, so when the mirrors are distorted, your mind does something sneaky. It starts listening to silence instead. Silence becomes the loudest voice in the room, the text that never comes back, the invite you see on someone's story that you weren't included in, The way she goes from paragraphs to one-word replies and then to nothing at all. In that empty space, your brain rushes to write a script. It doesn't wait for context. It doesn't ask for evidence. It fills in the blanks with the most familiar pain. She's bored of me. I said something wrong. I'm not attractive enough. I'm just not the kind of man people fall for. Have you noticed how fast those lines show up? How automatic they feel, almost rehearsed? The hardest part is that silence doesn't just stay about that one person. One unread message at night turns into a whole story about your entire life. Of course they didn't pick me for that trip. I'm always the extra. Of course she stopped trying. I'm forgettable. Of course my phone is dry. I'm not the man anyone is excited to love. It's not just about this moment. Your mind quietly connects it to every other time you felt unchosen. And what scares me most is how willing we are to believe the harsh version. Your brain would rather have a painful story than no story at all. Because at least if you decide, I'm the problem, there's a kind of certainty. Certainty hurts, but confusion feels unbearable. Not, why didn't they answer? But what's wrong with me? Not, what's going on with them? But why am I so unlovable? And yet, if we slow down, isn't that a little unfair to you? People disappear for reasons that have nothing to do with your worth. Sometimes it's timing. They met you right before a move, right after a breakup, right in the middle of their own private collapse. Sometimes it's their wounds. They don't know how to handle steady love, so they chase chaos instead. Sometimes it's fear. Answering you means being seen, and being seen means risking being left, and they'd rather vanish than feel that. There's nothing wrong with wondering if you did something wrong. That doesn't make you needy or weak. It just means you're human, trying to make sense of gaps in information with a mind that has been trained to blame you first. But your loneliness is not proof that you're unlovable. Their silence is not a signed document that says, you are the problem. Being alone in this season doesn't mean you'll always be alone. You're not behind, you're not forgotten. You're not cursed to be the man who loves more than he's loved back. You're just in the part of the story where silence is loud, and you're learning not to mistake its echo for the truth about you. So if silence isn't a reliable storyteller, where do you go instead to learn what you're actually worth? Timing versus rejection. Two very different stories. So if silence isn't a reliable storyteller, where do you go instead to learn what you're actually worth? One place we have to start is here. The difference between it hasn't happened yet and it will never happen. They sound almost the same in your chest at night. The same tightness, the same drop in your stomach. But they are not the same truth. It hasn't happened yet is about time, circumstance, crossing paths. It's the reality that love is two lives lining up for a moment, not just one person wanting it badly enough. It will never happen is about identity. It's a verdict on who you are as a man. One is a description of the calendar. The other is a sentence you write on your own name. And the hardest part is how easily your brain blurs them together. Because think about how many almosts you've had. The girl who moved cities right when you were finally ready. The connection that felt real until her mental health collapsed, or yours did, and survival took priority over romance. The woman who met you before you'd done any healing, when you were still numbing out, still angry, still scared to be seen. It's not just about desire. It's about timing, capacity, and whether both of you were actually available in the same season. I've watched men meet their partner at 19 and get married at 23. I've also watched men meet their person at 41 after a divorce they thought would destroy them. I know a man who met his wife in a grief group after his father died, another who found love when he left the city, changed careers, and finally stopped trying to be who his friends expected. There's nothing wrong with the man who marries young, and there's nothing wrong with the man who doesn't. Different doesn't mean defective, but your brain doesn't care about nuance when it's tired of being unchosen. After enough disappointments, "not now" starts to sound like "not ever," and then it mutates into "not you." Every unanswered message, every situationship that fades, every time you're the friend she vents to about someone else, your nervous system keeps a quiet score. What scares me most is how fast that score turns into a story. If it was going to happen, it would have happened by now. You look around and see men your age with rings, with kids, with anniversary posts, and you tell yourself you're behind. But you're not behind. You're on a different road. Some men build a life with their first love. Some discover real love after they walk away from the one that kept them small. Some only become capable of healthy love after therapy, after losing everything, after finally admitting they're lonely. There's no moral ranking on these timelines. There's only the truth of where you are and what you've lived. So here's the gentle challenge. What if your story so far is not proof of your unlovability, but proof that your timeline is simply different from the one you were taught to expect? What if the years you call failure are actually the years that make you able to hold the kind of love you're asking for? It just means the script you were handed doesn't fit the life you're actually living. You're not forgotten. You're not cursed. You're not the exception to love. You're a human being in the middle of a story, and this chapter is about patience, not punishment. The question now isn't, will it ever happen? The question is, how do you live and love yourself in the middle of the waiting? How father wounds echo in a man's love life. So when I ask how you live and love yourself in the middle of the waiting, I can't avoid the next question. Where did you first learn what love feels like when it shows up, or doesn't? For a lot of men, the answer isn't some breakup in their 20s. It's a quieter story that started in their own house, long before they ever stayed up at night wondering why they feel so alone. People hear father wound and think it only means a violent dad or a man who disappeared. Sometimes it does, but it's not just about that. It can be the father who was physically there every evening, yet emotionally gone, locked behind a screen or a closed expression. It can be the dad who was unpredictable, warm one day and ice the next. It can be the man who never hit you, but whose words landed harder than any fist. The hardest part is, as boys, we don't have the language for any of this. We just notice patterns. When I cry and he rolls his eyes, I learn something. When you bring home a drawing and your father only points out the mistake, you learn something. Not, I am loved no matter what, but love is conditional, scarce, a prize I have to win. Not, I am safe, but if I'm too much, I'll be pushed away. If I'm not enough, I'll be ignored. Over time, that doesn't stay in the house. It moves into every room of your adult life. A distant or rejecting father quietly teaches a boy that male love is dangerous territory, that getting close to anyone might end in the same coldness. So without meaning to, you start expecting that from partners too. You wait for the silence. You brace for the disappointment. You pull away first so you don't have to feel unchosen again. Attachment research has a name for this: avoidant attachment. On the surface, it looks calm, independent, unbothered. I don't need anyone. I'm fine. But what scares me most is how often that calm is just a shield for a much softer truth. A deep fear that if someone really sees you, your need, your tenderness, your confusion, they'll decide you're not lovable and leave. So you leave emotionally before anyone can leave you. Think about the emotionally shut down boyfriend. The one who seems indifferent when you say you're hurt, who shrugs in the middle of a fight and goes quiet for days. From the outside, it looks cold. From the inside, his history might sound like this: a father who mocked feelings, who called tears weak, who met every vulnerable moment with a joke or a jab. So he adapted. He learned to numb out instead of risk being shamed. That doesn't make you heartless. It just means somewhere along the way, your nervous system decided that feeling was more dangerous than distance. There's nothing wrong with you for learning those rules. They kept you safe in a house that didn't know what to do with your softness. But if the first man who was supposed to love you struggled to show it, how could that not leave a mark on what you believe you deserve now? And if that mark is still running your love life from the shadows, what happens when you finally turn around and face it, in the boy who decided, I won't need anyone? Sometimes the mark shows up in a single afternoon that should have been ordinary. He's 8, standing outside the school with his backpack digging into his shoulders. One by one, cars pull up, doors swing open, kids run into arms that were waiting. The crowd thins. The sky goes from gold to that bluish gray that means night is coming. His ride doesn't show. No text, no call. Just teachers locking doors and saying, I'm sure they're on their way, while the parking lot turns into silence, or it's even smaller. He reaches for a hug after a bad dream and hears, stop crying, go back to bed. A hand that could have pulled him close pushes him away, maybe gently, maybe annoyed, but enough. Enough for a boy to feel the message underneath the words. Your need is wrong. He doesn't scream, and he doesn't throw anything. He just sits there in his own chest and quietly decides, I won't need anyone again. Not out loud, not dramatic, just a private contract signed in the dark. If needing gets me forgotten, I'll stop needing. If reaching gets me pushed away, I'll stop reaching. The hardest part is how well that promise works. Years pass and it stops being a moment and starts being a personality. He becomes the one who drives everyone home, but never asks for a ride. The friend who listens at 2 a.m., but never calls at 2 a.m. The man who can lift 300 pounds at the gym, fix things, pay bills, carry everyone's weight, but can't lift his eyes to say, please don't leave. On the outside, it looks like strength. Hyper-independent, reliable, low maintenance. People say, you're so solid, you never need anything inside. And it's not just about being strong, it's about survival. When you've sworn you won't need anyone, letting someone matter feels dangerous, almost wrong, like breaking a rule that kept you alive. So in relationships, the same pattern plays out. Partners say, he's distant, hard to read, emotionally unavailable. They say, you never let me in. And he doesn't know how to explain that what scares me most isn't commitment, it's dependence. It's the thought that if he ever truly leans, if he ever lets himself need, he'll be left on that curb again, alone with the lights turning off. Here's the pattern interrupt. What if your strength has been, in part, a shield? Not fake, not wrong, but armor built around a very real, very young disappointment. There's nothing wrong with being capable. That doesn't make you cold. And it just means there's a part of you that learned love and need were dangerous to mix. You're not behind for learning that. You're not forgotten by love because you protected yourself. But if you recognize yourself in this, the next question becomes unavoidable. How do you let yourself be held now without betraying the boy who promised he'd never need anyone again? The man who feels too much and thinks it's too much. Sometimes the boy who promised he'd never need anyone again grows into the man who feels everything and wishes he didn't. Maybe that's you. You walk into a room and you don't just see people, you feel them. You notice the slight change in her tone when she says she's fine. You catch the way your friend's eyes drop when money comes up. You sense the tension before the argument starts, and your whole body braces. Yeah, because conflict doesn't just stay outside you, it lives in your chest. The hardest part is, you've probably been told your whole life that this is too much. You're dramatic. You're soft. You're overreacting. Maybe you cried once and someone laughed. Maybe you shared something real, and they called you sensitive in that sharp, shaming way, not as a compliment. So you learned to hear your own heartbeat as a problem, not, I care deeply, but I'm wrong for caring this much. And in dating, it gets louder. You're the man who wants to text good morning because you actually thought about her when you woke up. You want to say, get home safe, and mean it. Not as a line, but as a small act of love. But then the questions start spiraling. Am I texting too much? Caring too quickly? Coming off needy? So you delete the message. You wait an extra hour. You pretend you didn't see her story. You perform calm when your heart is anything but. What scares me most is how many men do this until they don't recognize themselves. You're on the date, nodding, smiling, playing it cool, saying, yeah, whatever works, when everything in you wants to say, I like you, I want this, I hope you stay. You go home to the night and the silence, and you feel alone in a way that isn't just about being single. It's about feeling unchosen for who you actually are, because you never showed him. But there's nothing wrong with feeling this much. That doesn't make you weak, clingy, or less of a man. It just means your nervous system is honest. You're more aware of what's happening inside you, and that awareness is the same thing that lets you notice when someone else is hurting before they say a word. The same thing that makes you the friend people call at 2 a.m. The same thing that lets you sit with someone's tears without needing to fix them. It's not just about being sensitive. It's about being attuned. The world is full of people begging to be understood, and you carry the exact skill set that could make someone feel finally seen, finally safe. Many partners are starving for that kind of presence, for a man who doesn't disappear when emotions show up. You're not behind for feeling deeply. You're not forgotten by love because you care too much. You are not too much. You are exactly as much as someone has been praying for. This tenderness doesn't make you less worthy of being loved, and it makes you more capable of loving deeply. And the real work ahead is not shrinking that, but learning how to offer it to someone who can actually hold it. When being a man means being alone with your pain, and for a lot of men, that's where the story gets complicated. Because you can be this tender, loyal, quietly romantic person on the inside, and still have been raised in a world that tells you from the beginning that your softness is something you're supposed to hide. Not because love is wrong for you, but because somewhere along the way, be a man got twisted into don't ever need anyone. When you grow up hearing that, it changes how you carry pain. The hardest part is not the pain itself, but the rule that says you're supposed to handle it alone. In some surveys, 1 in 5 men report having no close friends at all. Well, it's not one. And many more say they don't have anyone they can talk to about personal problems. You can be surrounded by people, by noise, by group chats that never sleep, and still have no one who actually knows the thoughts that keep you up at night. So the hurt becomes private. Not because you don't feel it, but because you've been trained to turn it inward. Be strong. Don't be soft. Don't make it a big deal. It's not just about not crying. It's about never saying, I'm scared no one will ever choose me. Emotional pain turns into this secret weight you carry in silence. And over time, you start to believe that if you were really a man, it wouldn't hurt this much to feel unchosen. Think about how most male spaces work. The locker room, the group chat, the late-night gaming call. There's joking, teasing, stories about work, sex, or money, the gym. On the surface, it looks close. But how often does anyone say, do you ever feel unlovable without it being turned into a joke within 3 seconds? What scares me most is how normal that feels. How quickly a real feeling gets covered with a meme, a punchline, a change of subject, so no one has to sit in the silence that follows an honest sentence. And that isolation isn't harmless. In many Western countries, men die by suicide at roughly 3 to 4 times the rate of women. That doesn't make men weaker. It just means a lot of them are sitting alone with pain that has nowhere to go, convinced there's nothing wrong, convinced this is just what being a man is. Unspoken fear, unshared shame. No safe place to say, I don't know how to live with this loneliness anymore. Nights get especially loud then, and when the group chat goes quiet, when you're alone in your bed, staring at the ceiling, and all the armor comes off, you start asking yourself questions you never say out loud. Am I unlovable? Am I the problem? Am I just not meant to be chosen? You don't stop believing in love. You stop believing love wants you. You're not behind for feeling that way. You're not forgotten because you crave tenderness. But if you've been told your whole life to carry your pain alone, what happens when that pain is about not feeling worth loving in the first place? Your desire for love is not weakness when your pain is about not feeling worth loving. It starts to seep into everything. It's there when you unlock the door at night and there's no one calling out your name. Or it's there when something funny happens at work and your first instinct is to reach for your phone. Then you realize there's no person you're excited to tell. You don't just want noise. You want someone to come home to. You want a body that feels like a safe place to rest. Not just sex, but the weight of an arm over your chest, the warmth of a leg against yours, the quiet breathing of someone who has chosen to be there. You want to roll over in the middle of the night and feel skin, not sheets. You want to send a stupid meme and know they'll get why it's not just about the joke. It's about saying, you're the one I think of. So you hug a pillow, you scroll old messages, you replay the last time someone held you, even if it was years ago. The hardest part is, you've probably called yourself pathetic for it. But those aren't the habits of a desperate man. They're the body remembering closeness, muscle memory of love. Your nervous system trying to remind you, we have been safe before. we could be safe again. That doesn't make you weak. It just means you're human. You've been told that needing reassurance is childish, that wanting to be held is something you should have grown out of. But needing connection is as human as needing food or sleep. It doesn't disappear because you're a man. It doesn't vanish just because you can pay your bills, lift heavy, or sit through the night in silence without crying. You can be steady and still long for someone to say, "I'm not going anywhere." There's nothing wrong with that. What scares me most is how many men pretend they're fine with casual sex, when what they really crave is tenderness, commitment, emotional safety. You go along with the script. Keep it light. No feelings, no labels. You say you're cool with seeing where it goes, when inside you're wondering, will you stay if I stop performing? Being honest that you want more doesn't make you clingy. It makes you clear. Pattern interrupt for a second. Just in your head say, I'm allowed to want to be loved. Then notice what comes up. Do you feel a little embarrassed? Do you hear a voice saying, that's needy, that's weak, that's why people leave? That shame didn't start with you. It was handed to you by parents who couldn't hold you, by friends who mocked softness, by partners who wanted your body but not your heart. You're not behind because you still want that simple, steady love. You're not forgotten for needing a hand on your back and a voice saying, Joe, I choose you. The question now isn't whether you're allowed to want love. It's what happens when you stop apologizing for it and start asking whether the people you let close can actually meet you there. The body remembers being held, even when your life doesn't. Some nights, it's not even sexual. You're just lying there on your side of the bed or on a mattress that's only ever had one side, and your chest hurts in this dull, slow way that doesn't have a name. You're not thinking about positions or fantasies. You're thinking about weight, about warmth, about the sound of someone else's breathing in the dark. The hardest part is trying to explain that ache without sounding dramatic or desperate. Because it's not just about being horny. It's this strange craving for a steady arm across your ribs, a leg thrown over yours, a body close enough that your nervous system finally believes, even for a moment, we're safe, we're not alone. It's the way your skin remembers pressure, remembers being held, and starts to panic when that pressure has been gone for too long. We don't talk enough about how the body keeps score of every time it felt chosen. Being rocked as a child, falling asleep on someone's chest, a friend's hand on your shoulder when your world was falling apart. Your nervous system doesn't file those as cute memories. It files them as proof of life, proof of love, proof that you're allowed to relax. So when you're sitting in the night silence, scrolling, pretending you're fine, your body is quietly comparing then and now, held and unheld, safe and braced. What scares me most is how fast the story can twist when that gap gets big, and when life is full of stress and empty of gentle touch. Your body doesn't just say, I miss hugs. It says, something's wrong, something vital is missing. That's when the questions start. Is it me? Am I too much? Not enough? Not because you're weak, but because your nervous system learned long ago that touch often arrived with reassurance. You're okay. I've got you. Without it, the world feels harsher, even when nothing obvious has changed. There's nothing wrong with you if the lack of touch makes you sad, or irritable, or strangely numb. Men are taught to act like skin doesn't matter unless it's sex. But that doesn't make you less human for wanting to be held with no agenda. It just means your body is honest. It knows that being untouched for months or years isn't neutral. It's a kind of quiet grief. You're mourning something you can't quite name because you were never taught to name it. You're not behind for wanting skin-to-skin comfort. You're not forgotten because your bed is empty right now. Your longing isn't dirty or pathetic. That doesn't make you needy in the wrong way. It is your body remembering what safety felt like and asking very softly, "Can we have that again?" And the next part of this is learning how to answer that question with more than wishful thinking, how to find touch, care, and closeness that don't disappear the moment you stop performing for them. You're not thirsty for wanting to be chosen. So when you start asking, "How do I find that kind of touch and care?" another fear shows up. Not just, "Will I be loved?" but, "If I reach for it, will I look desperate?" What scares me most is how many men would rather sit in quiet loneliness than risk being seen as thirsty. You'd rather be starving in silence than be accused of wanting too much. You know that unwritten rule, right? The one that says you're allowed to want sex, attention, status, but not tenderness, not to be chosen. You can swipe, you can joke, you can flirt, but you can't say, "I miss you," without hearing that little voice. Is this pathetic? Am I begging? Am I the only one who cares this much? So you start performing indifference. You double text in your head but not on your phone. You wait hours to reply so you don't seem eager. You act casual when you're dying to ask, "Do you actually want me?" The hardest part is you're training people to believe you don't really care, then going home at night wondering why no one ever chooses you fully. It's not just about pride, it's survival. Men are taught early that affection is a reward you earn, not a need you're allowed to have. By the time you're grown, you can lift heavy at the gym, carry everyone's problems, pay every bill, and still not be able to lift your eyes and say, "Please don't leave." There's nothing wrong with you for wanting to be held, to be reassured, to hear, "I'm not going anywhere." That doesn't make you weak. It just means you're human. Think about what it actually costs to be honest, to say, "I like you," before you know they'll say it back. To admit, "I want to build something with you," in a culture that rewards whoever cares less. That's not thirst. That's courage. Anyone can hide behind games and delayed replies. It takes real bravery to be clear. But there is a difference you have to learn, or you'll keep wounding yourself. Wanting to be chosen by someone who never calls, never initiates, never meets you halfway. That's not romance. That's self-abandonment. That's you trying to convince someone to see you while they're facing the other way. Healthy desire is different. It feels like, "I want you, and you want me, and we both show it." It feels like effort that returns, not effort that disappears into silence. You're not behind if you still want that. You're not forgotten if some part of you keeps reaching out even after rejection. What if the part of you that still texts first, still hopes, still tries, that part you've been calling thirsty your whole life, is actually the most alive, most human part of you? And then what if the real work now isn't killing that part off, but learning how to aim it at someone who can finally meet it? Hope is proof you haven't gone numb, because the truth is, it's exhausting, isn't it? To still want love after everything, to keep opening the app, answering the messages, going on the dates, getting your hopes up on the way there, and dragging yourself home through the night when it ends in another quiet disappointment. It's not just tiring, it can feel humiliating. You start to feel foolish for still believing. You replay the pattern in your head. You try, you get a little connection, you start to hope, it fades, they pull back, or they choose someone else, and you're left alone with that familiar silence. The hardest part is not just the loneliness itself, but the story that creeps in after. If I keep hoping and nothing changes, something must be wrong with me. Not with them, not with timing, with you. But what if we pause that story for a second? What if we look at the same facts through a different lens? You've been hurt, rejected, ignored, ghosted, maybe betrayed. You've been told, directly or indirectly, that wanting affection makes you weak. By now, no one would blame you if you shut down completely. If you decided, I'm done. I don't care anymore. And yet, you still care. You still want to be chosen. You still feel that ache when you see real love in front of you. That doesn't make you pathetic. That doesn't make you naive. It just means there is a tender, stubbornly human part of you that survived everything that tried to harden you. Some men go numb. They bury themselves in work, porn, distractions, anything to not feel the sting of being unchosen. They say they don't need anyone, not because it's true, but because it's safer. Numbness says, I won't risk it again. Hope whispers, maybe one more try. What scares me most is how easily that hope turns into a weapon you use on yourself. If I still don't have love, I must be the problem. If I still care this much, I'm weak. If I still hope, I'm stupid. That's when hope stops being a light and starts feeling like proof you're failing at something everyone else figured out. But there's nothing wrong with wanting what you were built to need. It's not just about romance. It's about being seen and still kept, being fully known and not left. So I want you to try a different picture. Not you chasing love down a hallway, desperate and out of breath. You, standing in a long, dim corridor, holding a small, stubborn light. That light is your hope. It flickers sometimes, but it hasn't gone out. It's not evidence that you're broken. It's proof you haven't gone numb. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You're just still alive enough to care. And the next part of this is learning how to protect that light without putting it out. Don't turn the waiting into self-punishment, so the question becomes, what do you do with that light while you're still walking alone? Not in the fantasy version of your life, but on the actual Tuesday nights where you come home to an empty place, drop your keys, and realize no one is waiting for you. Birthdays hit different when you're the one blowing out candles and pretending you're not thinking about who isn't there. Holidays stretch longer when every spare chair at the table reminds you of the space beside you. Weddings are the worst, because every speech about timing and soulmates turns into a mirror. You don't just celebrate with them, you measure yourself against them. How old was he when he met her? How many years have they had that you haven't? Every event becomes a quiet scoreboard where you always feel behind. The hardest part is how automatic it becomes. Another year single? Must mean something is wrong with you. Another holiday alone? Must mean you're unlovable. You don't just notice the waiting, you turn it into evidence. Not, this hasn't happened yet, but this hasn't happened because I'm failing at being a man. You don't just feel unchosen, you start treating yourself as if you deserved to be. Men are good at turning this into punishment without even realizing it. You grind harder at work, not just to build a life, but to finally be worth choosing. You push your body to extremes in the gym, not just for health, but to outrun the fear that no one will want you as you are. Or you go the other way and withdraw. Stop going out. Stop answering messages. Stop showing up to weddings because the shame of arriving alone feels louder than the music. And then there's the voice, the one that says, "Of course she didn't pick you. Who would stay? You're too quiet, too soft, not enough." It's not just about being alone. It's about the way you talk to yourself in the silence. Would you say any of that to a friend who trusted you with his loneliness? And would you look him in the eyes and tell him he's a failure because love hasn't arrived on his timeline yet? This is where something has to shift. This season is not a verdict. It's a chapter. That doesn't make it painless. It just means it's not the whole book. You're allowed to build a life that feels like yours now, not a holding cell you sit in until someone bails you out with affection. There's nothing wrong with wanting love. What scares me most is when men decide they have to hate themselves until it comes. So start small. Notice when your inner voice turns cruel. Catch the sentence halfway through. Ask, "Would I say this to someone I care about?" Then soften it, even a little. You don't have to swing to cheesy affirmations. Just move from "I'm pathetic" to "I'm hurting." From "I'm behind" to "I'm in progress." You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You're human and you're waiting. Being alone right now does not equal being alone forever, but your mind may not believe that yet. We'll work with that next. Alone right now versus always alone. Being alone right now does not equal being alone forever, but your mind may not believe that yet, especially at night. When the silence feels heavier, your brain starts doing that thing it always does when you're in pain. It reaches for absolutes. Always. Never. No one. Everyone. It paints your whole future with the color of this one moment and calls it truth. You catch yourself thinking, "No one has ever chosen me," or "I'll always be the unchosen one." It sounds dramatic, but the hardest part is it also sounds convincing when you're tired and hurting. Your brain isn't trying to be cruel. It's trying to simplify. Not, "This is a hard season," but "This is my permanent reality." Not, "I'm alone right now," but "I am someone who is meant to be alone." Feel the difference in that? One describes a moment. The other becomes an identity. What scares me most is how quickly those sentences start to feel familiar. No one wants me. Everyone leaves. I'm never the one. They roll off your tongue before you even notice. But if you slow them down, if you put them under a softer light, you can practice something that sounds small, but is actually huge. Precise language. Not to be clinical, to be kind. To tell the truth without stabbing yourself with it. So instead of, "No one wants me," you try, "The people I've wanted so far haven't stayed. It still hurts. It's still loneliness, but it's more accurate." Instead of, "Everyone leaves," you say, "Well, the people I've let close so far haven't been able to stay." It's not just about polishing words. It's about refusing to curse your whole life because of a few chapters. That doesn't make you delusional. It just means you're choosing not to prophesy abandonment over a future you haven't lived yet. When you shift your language, you soften the blow without pretending it doesn't land. You're not saying, "It's fine, I don't care." You're saying, "It hurts, and it's not the whole story." Those absolutes, always, never, no one, everyone, slam the door shut. Precise words keep it cracked open. They leave room for timing, for growth, for people you haven't met, for versions of you that haven't arrived. They leave room for love to still be possible, even if it's not present. Imagine your life as a long timeline on a wall. There's a before love section, and somewhere ahead, a with love section. Maybe there have been brief sparks, almosts, or one-sided stories. Maybe it's been mostly quiet. But wherever you are, you're not standing at the end of the line. You're standing in a chapter. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You're in the middle of the book, even if this page feels blank. So if this is a chapter, not the whole book, the question becomes different. Instead of, will anyone ever choose me? It turns into, who am I while I'm unchosen? What kind of man are you in the in-between space before anyone else arrives? When no one is watching, when the bed is cold, when the night is honest? Because the man you practice being there is the man love will eventually meet. And in the next part, and I want to ask you something you might not have let yourself consider yet. You are not behind. The myth of the right timeline. So here's the question I wanted to bring you to. Who told you you're late? Somewhere along the way, there was this script handed to us. By your late 20s or early 30s, you're supposed to have a stable career, a partner, maybe a home, maybe kids on the horizon. Not just working, but established. Not just dating, but settled down. There's this quiet pressure that by a certain age, your life is supposed to look finished enough to post. The hardest part is what happens when it doesn't. When you're still renting a small place while your friends are posting new house keys. When you're scrolling past engagement photos and baby announcements from people you used to share cheap takeout with, and you're still eating alone at the same kind of table. Still single. Still figuring things out. Still wondering if the silence in your apartment means something is wrong with you. You start doing math you were never meant to do. If they're married now, and I'm not, what does that say about me? If he already has 2 kids and a promotion, and I'm changing careers or starting over, am I behind or just lost? Am I too quiet? Too much? Not enough? What scares me most is how quickly my timing is different turns into, I'm failing at being a man. But who decided that 28 is success and 35 is panic? These timelines are not laws. They're cultural habits, old economic models, and social media highlight reels stitched together and sold as destiny. It's not just about biology or responsibility. Again, it's about comparison and performance. We forget that people marry earlier in some places because of tradition, later in others because of cost of living, and sometimes not at all because that's their truth. None of that makes their love less real. I keep meeting men whose lives didn't follow the neat arc, and their stories are full of love. The man who married at 42 after a brutal divorce in his 30s, who says he's never been this seen. The one who spent most of his 20s and 30s single, healing from a father wound, then met someone at 46 who loves the exact softness he used to hide. The guy who changed careers at 35, lost status, felt unchosen for years, then found a partner who didn't care about his job title, only his presence. That doesn't make them late. It just means their arc is different. Pattern interrupt for a second. If I told you your favorite movie only becomes beautiful in the last 30 minutes, would you call the first hour a failure or part of the buildup? There's nothing wrong with wanting the milestones. There's nothing wrong with feeling the loneliness when they're not here yet. But you're not behind. You're not forgotten. Your worth isn't a countdown. Your love story was never meant to follow a template written for someone else's family, someone else's economy, someone else's timeline. In the next part, I want to ask what happens when you stop racing the clock and start asking what actually makes a life feel loved from the inside. Placing yourself inside a bigger story. When I say your story, I mean that literally. Imagine for a second that your life is a film or a novel you're walking through in real time. The hardest part is, most days it doesn't feel cinematic at all. It feels like background noise. You go to work, you come home, you scroll in the night silence, and it seems like everyone else got cast as the romantic lead while you're stuck as an extra in the back of their love scenes. But you're not the extra in everyone else's love story. You are the main character in yours. That doesn't mean the camera is always on you in some dramatic way. It just means the quiet parts, the alone parts, the nothing is happening parts. Those are still part of the plot. They're not a glitch. They're the pages where depth is being written, even when you feel unchosen and invisible. Think about your favorite stories. How many of them start with instant love, instant certainty, instant belonging? Most of them spend a long time in the before the partner, before the purpose is clear, before the man even knows how to hold love without dropping himself. It's not just about getting to the relationship. It's about who he becomes in all the chapters leading up to it. There's a difference between before love and never love, but loneliness blurs that line, doesn't it? A few years of bad dates, unanswered texts, or being the friend everyone vents to but never chooses, and your brain quietly changes the genre from slow burn romance to permanent tragedy. You don't just feel alone. You start to believe your story was written wrong from the start. What scares me most is how many men carry that belief in silence. On the outside, you're composed, maybe even confident. On the inside, you're asking, if I stop performing, will anyone stay? If I stop being useful, will anyone love me? And because no one ever told you that needing affection is human, not weak, you assume that emptiness means you're defective, not just early in the plot. But you're not forgotten. You're not behind. Just because your story doesn't look like theirs right now doesn't mean it's off track. It just means you're in a different chapter. Some men meet love at 20. Some meet it after the divorce, after the layoff, after they finally let themselves cry about the father who never called. The timing doesn't make one story more worthy than another. Somewhere ahead, there are people you haven't met yet who will read you differently than the ones who skimmed and misjudged you. People who won't need you to shrink, or harden, or perform to be chosen. I can't promise faces or timelines, but I can say this: your story is still being written, and the pages you're in right now matter. So maybe the question isn't, will I ever be loved? Maybe the real question is, who am I becoming while I wait? Because that's where your power actually lives. And that's the part we're going to talk about next. Male friendships. The missing layer of being seen who you're becoming while you wait isn't only shaped by romance. It's also shaped by the men you stand next to, laugh with, and never really let see you. And I think that's one of the quiet reasons so many of us feel alone, even when we're surrounded. Most of the time, male friendship is built around something. The game, the gym, the group chat. You talk about work, plans, memes, the new show. You roast each other, you keep it light, you keep it moving. And it looks full from the outside, It sounds loud. But under all of that, there's a kind of silence no one wants to name. Because you can be out with the guys every weekend and still have no one who knows you're scared of ending up unchosen. You can send 100 messages in the group chat and never once say, "I'm not okay." Not because you don't feel it, but because somewhere you learned that needing comfort is wrong. That softness makes you less of a man. That love is something you're supposed to earn with results, not ask for as a human need. The hardest part is when romance becomes the only place you let yourself be soft. Being single starts to feel brutal. It's not just about missing sex or dates or someone to text goodnight. It's the feeling of having nowhere to put your heart. Nowhere you're allowed to be scared. Nowhere you can say, "I feel unwanted," without immediately trying to fix it with a joke. What scares me most is how normal this has become. Men who can lift 300 pounds but can't lift their eyes and say, "Please don't leave." Men who would rather disappear than admit, "I feel lonely." That doesn't make you weak. It just means you've been trained to carry everything alone and then punished when the weight bends you. But there's another way to be a man with men. The kind of friendship where someone looks at you and, without performance, their presence says, "I see you. I value you. I'm not going anywhere." When you have even one man in your life who knows your fears, your shame, your history, the pressure on romance softens. A partner doesn't have to be your only home. They get to be one of your homes. And there's nothing wrong with starting small. One honest sentence with a trusted friend. One deeper question after the game. How's your heart, really? One moment where you say, "I've been feeling really alone lately," and you let the silence stretch instead of covering it. You don't have to turn your friendships into therapy. You just have to let a little more truth in. Because maybe part of feeling more lovable isn't only about finding the right woman or the right relationship. What if part of healing that ache is letting yourself be loved by the men in your life, too? What if the next version of you, the one we're about to talk about, isn't just softer with women, but safer with men? Letting yourself be loved by your friends. I used to think the love that mattered would only come from one person. One woman. One relationship that finally proved I was chosen. And in that tunnel vision, I missed the quiet ways I was already being held. Not at night in someone's arms, but in the middle of the day by the men who wouldn't let me disappear. No one tells us there's a hierarchy of love we're swallowing. Romantic at the top, then maybe family, and somewhere underneath, if there's room, friendship. Not real love, just the boys, just people to pass time with. So when a friend drives you home at 2 a.m. or answers the phone on your worst day, you file it under nice, not, "This is someone loving me." You stay loyal to the story that you're unchosen, even while people are choosing you in smaller, quieter ways. But it's not just about grand gestures. A friend who checks in after your breakup, who remembers your interview date, who shows up when you move and carries the heavy boxes without making you feel weak. That's love. A guy who sits next to you in silence when your chest is tight and your words are stuck and doesn't rush you or fix you is loving you. The word doesn't have to be spoken for the reality to be true. The hardest part is letting that in, letting yourself be the one who needs. Maybe you were raised on handle it yourself. Maybe every time you reached for comfort as a boy, you were met with distance, or a joke, or that look that said, "What's wrong with you?" So now, when a friend offers help, your first reflex is no. Not because you don't need it, but because you're scared that if you lean, you'll be too heavy and they'll step away. What scares me most is how many men feel unworthy of basic care. Compliments make you uncomfortable, as being listened to feels suspicious. You tell yourself you're a burden if someone spends time on you. That doesn't make you broken. It just means your nervous system learned that love is unsafe or conditional, or something you have to earn by never asking for anything back. So maybe you start with small experiments. Say yes when a friend offers a ride, or a couch, or a place at their table. Share good news with a man in your life, not just bad news, and notice if he lights up for you. Text, "I really appreciate you." And watch how often he doesn't pull away, but leans closer, relieved that someone finally said it out loud. Pattern interrupt for a second. If you wrote down every small way people have cared for you in the last year, every check-in, every text me when you get home, every time someone waited in the silence with you, would it change the story that no one loves me, even a little? Not to erase the loneliness, but to remind you you're not forgotten, you're not alone, and love is already here, learning how to look more like you. Vulnerability. The doorway men are afraid to open, and yet, even knowing that, you still feel that catch in your chest when someone looks at you a second too long. Not the casual glance, but the kind that might actually see you, because being cared for in small ways is one thing. Letting someone near the places you're most afraid of, that's different. Vulnerability gets talked about so much it starts to sound like a brand. Share your story. Open up. Be real. But real vulnerability isn't just telling a story you've already made peace with. And it's not just about mentioning that you were sad once, or that you had a rough childhood in a way that keeps your voice steady and your eyes dry. It's letting yourself be seen exactly where it still hurts, where the wound hasn't turned into wisdom yet. For a lot of men, that's the most dangerous doorway. You think, if I show her how insecure I am about my body, or my money, or how much I need her, she'll leave. If my friends knew how lonely I am, how I sit at night in the silence, scrolling through contacts I never call, they'd respect me less. The hardest part is, you've probably been taught that needing love this much is what makes you weak, not what makes you human. So you build walls. You become the one who listens but never really shares. The one who makes the joke before anyone can notice the sadness. The one who keeps conversations at the level of facts and updates so no one has to touch the fear underneath. What scares me most is not being alone for a night, but being unchosen for a lifetime. And those walls do protect you from some things. They filter out mockery. They keep you from handing your heart to just anyone. But here's the paradox no one explains when they tell you to man up. The same walls that keep rejection out also keep love from getting close enough to be felt. People might love the version of you that's always fine, always strong, always chill. But if love can't reach the parts of you that feel small and scared and unsure, it never really lands. You're surrounded and starving at the same time. The quiet truth is, many partners and friends actually feel closer when you share the fears you're most ashamed of. Not the polished lesson, but the trembling sentence. When you say, "I'm scared I'm not enough. I'm scared you'll leave if you see all of me." That doesn't make you less of a man. It just means you're finally letting connection be real instead of performed. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be held in the places you've only ever hidden. Men aren't always afraid of commitment. Often, they're afraid of being truly seen and then abandoned. So how do you risk being seen without losing yourself, without handing your whole sense of worth to someone who could walk away at any moment? Secure attachment. What it feels like to be loved safely. I used to think the only options were two extremes. Either stay armored and untouched, or hand someone the power to destroy me and call that love. But there's this third thing no one really explained to us as men. What it feels like to be loved safely, without disappearing or performing. Attachment theory sounds clinical, but it's really just about the stories your nervous system tells about love. Secure attachment is that quiet, steady sense of, I am worthy of love, and the people I choose are generally reliable. Not perfect, not flawless, just reachable. It's not just about what you think in your head, it's the way your body stops bracing for impact every time someone gets close. In secure love, you can say, I miss you, without hearing your own voice and cringing. You can text, can we talk? And not spiral if they don't answer in 5 minutes. You can have a disagreement at night and still sleep, because some part of you trusts that conflict doesn't equal abandonment. So an affection doesn't feel suspicious or fake. It lands. You don't have to earn every hug with performance. You don't have to be at your strongest to deserve a soft place to land. The hardest part is, many men have never felt that. If you grew up with emotional neglect, with a father who is present in the house but absent in the heart, your body might have learned something else. Love is unstable. Love is distant. Love is work. So you adapt. You become anxious or avoidant, sometimes both in the same relationship, and you call it just how I am. Anxious love looks like clinging and overthinking. You replay every message. You wonder, am I too much? Too needy? Not enough? You apologize for having needs at all. Avoidant love looks different on the surface. You shut down. You keep it casual. You stay half in, half out, so always with one foot near the exit. But underneath both patterns is the same fear. What if I'm not actually lovable when someone really sees me? That doesn't make you broken. It just means you adapted to loneliness the only way you knew how. What scares me most is how many men think these patterns are life sentences. They're not. Attachment isn't fixed. It's a living thing with safe people who show up, with therapy that helps you hear your own history, with self-awareness that notices, oh, I'm pulling away right now because I'm scared. Your system can slowly learn a new story. Love can stay. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You're just early in a different kind of training. But if all you've ever known is unstable, painful love, there's a real question under all of this. How do you even begin to believe that a calmer and steadier love could be real for you, not just for other people on screens? And if your whole body is wired for chaos, where do you actually start rewiring it? Learning to believe good love when it finally shows up sometimes. The strangest part is not the loneliness, but the moment it finally softens. Someone shows up who is kind, who texts back when they say they will, who remembers the small things you mentioned in passing. And you feel this tiny exhale in your chest, like, maybe. But under that, there's another voice already waiting in the dark, whispering, give it time. The real them will come out. This is going to hurt. You sit across from them at night, maybe at some quiet table or on a couch, and they're just steady. Not love bombing, not disappearing, just there. And instead of relaxing, your brain starts scanning. Are they pretending? Are they going to get bored? Are they only here because they don't really know me yet? It's not just about whether they're good for you. It's about whether you can even believe that something good would choose you without a catch. So you start doing the things you learned to do to survive. You pick small fights over nothing, just to see if they'll raise their voice or walk out. You pull away for a few days to test if they'll chase you or give up. You downplay your feelings and say, "It's whatever, I'm chill," because you're sure that if they knew how much you care, they'd run. That doesn't make you broken. It just means your nervous system is still convinced love is a trap. The hardest part is noticing that these are not just bad habits, they're old alarms. They were useful when people were inconsistent, when you had to predict rejection before it landed. But with someone who is actually trying, those alarms become self-sabotage. You're not pushing them away because you don't want love. You're pushing them away because you're terrified of what happens if you let them all the way in and they leave anyway. So maybe you don't start with believing in forever. Maybe you start with something smaller, something human-sized. Did they do what they said they would do this week? Did they listen when you shared something vulnerable? Did they apologize when they were wrong? Slow trust is still trust. You're allowed to let belief grow in layers, one pattern of reliability at a time. And inside your own head, the script can shift too. Instead of, "They're too good for me, this is a mistake," you try, "They seem to like me as I am. Maybe I don't have to perform as hard here." What scares me most is how many men never get to hear that there's nothing wrong with needing reassurance. Wanting to be chosen doesn't make you weak. It just means you're honest about being human. Pattern interrupt, just for a second. What if the next person who loves you isn't a trick, or a test, or a setup for another lesson? What if their presence is actually what your past pain has been training you to recognize and appreciate? Not because suffering is romantic, but because now you can tell the difference between chaos and care. And if that's even a little bit true, the next question becomes, how do you stay open enough to receive that kind of love without losing yourself again? Self-compassion, talking to yourself like someone you love. So how do you stay open without losing yourself again? For me, it started in the quiet, not with another person, but with the way I talked to myself when the night got heavy and the loneliness felt personal. Not, "No one is here," but "no one is choosing me." That's when the old voice would come back, the one that said, "Of course they're not. Who would?" Self-compassion sounds soft, almost suspicious, especially if you're a man who's been taught to grind, to endure, to take the hit and keep moving. But all it really means is this: treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you'd offer your closest friend if he told you the exact same story you're living. Not special treatment, not excuses, just basic human decency, directed inward for once. Yet what scares me most is how many of us will defend everyone else before we ever defend ourselves. A friend says, "I feel unlovable," and you rush to remind him of his loyalty, his effort, the way he keeps showing up. You'd never call him weak for wanting love. You'd never tell him he's wrong for being alone right now. But when it's you, suddenly the rules change. Suddenly needing tenderness means you've failed at being a man. The hardest part is admitting that harsh self-criticism hasn't actually made you stronger. It's just made the silence louder. It didn't turn you into the confident, chosen version of yourself you were aiming for. It just turned your own mind into a place you're scared to be alone in. You still hope for love, but now hope itself hurts. Because every unanswered text, every unreturned interest, it feels like proof your inner critic was right. There's a reason so many men can lift heavy at the gym but can't lift their eyes and say, "Please don't leave." We were handed silent rules. Don't need too much. Don't ask for reassurance. Don't show softness unless it's a joke. But there's nothing wrong with needing affection. That doesn't make you weak or lazy or complacent. It just means you're human, with a nervous system that calms down when it feels cared for instead of attacked. So here's a practice. Next time self-hate shows up and starts narrating your worth, pause and imagine your best friend saying those exact words about himself. "I'm unlovable. I'm behind. No one will ever choose me." What would you say back? Really picture it. The tone, the patience, the way you'd remind him he's not behind, he's not forgotten. See, he's just in a hard chapter. Then, as awkward as it feels, direct that same response inward, word for word. It won't fix everything overnight, but it will start to shift the atmosphere inside your own head. You may not be able to control when love arrives, or who finally sees you and stays. But you can control whether your mind is a war zone you're always trying to escape, or a place you can at least rest in for a moment, while you learn the next piece of this: how to receive care without running from it. Rewriting the voice in your head, you can't change how you receive care without bumping into the voice that tells you you don't deserve it. The one that shows up in the silence, right when someone is being kind to you and whispers, they'll leave when they see the real you. When you start to believe you're not worth staying for, whose voice is that really? Is it your father's, thrown across the room as a joke that didn't feel like a joke? Is it your mother's disappointment, the way her face fell when you cried instead of being strong? Is it the girl in high school who chose your friend and said, "You're sweet, but not my type"? Or is it something even bigger than that? The whole world telling you what a real man should be. Unshakable, unbothered, never lonely, never needing love. The hardest part is, most men never get asked this out loud. They just absorb it. A coach calling you soft, a bully laughing at your body, an ex saying you're too closed off or too intense or too emotionally unavailable. After a while, you don't need them in the room anymore, and you've memorized their lines. You perform the criticism on yourself before anyone else can. That's how repetition works. Not because those words were ever an accurate measure of your worth, but because your brain is trying to keep you safe. If it can predict the pain, it thinks it can control it. So the messages you heard at 5 or 12 or 20 start to feel like truth. Not, "My dad was emotionally distant," but "I'm forgettable." Not, "She didn't know how to love me," but "I'm unlovable." What scares me most is how convincing that inner narrator can sound. It uses your voice. It borrows your memories. It tells you there's nothing wrong with being alone, but then twists it into, "You're alone because you're wrong." And on the nights when the loneliness is loud, when you're scrolling and everyone else seems chosen, and it's easy to believe it. So I want you to try something simple and maybe a bit uncomfortable. The next time that script starts playing, "You're not enough. You're too much. No one stays." Pause and ask, who said this first? Whose face shows up with that sentence? A parent? A teacher? An ex? A faceless crowd of men on the internet telling you how to be? Write it down if you can, or just sit with it. Then ask yourself, honestly, if I had a choice today, would I hire this person as the judge of my value? Would I trust them with my heart, with my future, with the boy I used to be who just wanted to be held and told he was good? Because it's not just about positive thinking. It's about realizing that some of the harshest things you believe about yourself were never yours to begin with. That doesn't make you weak, and it just means you've been carrying other people's damage as if it was your identity. And if those stories were never actually yours, who might you be without them? Who shows up when the old voices finally go quiet and a different one starts to speak? Small acts of choosing yourself before anyone else does. When those old voices start to quiet down, there's this strange, almost uncomfortable silence. You look around your own life and realize, if those stories weren't true, then now what? Who takes care of you while you're figuring that out? This is where choosing yourself stops being a cliche on a screen and becomes something much smaller, much more ordinary, and somehow much harder. Because the hardest part is, it's not just about grand declarations of self-love. It's about the tiny, boring Tuesday afternoon decisions that say, my life matters, even before anyone joins it. Cooking a real meal for yourself instead of always defaulting to whatever's fastest. Not because you're trying to impress someone, but because your body is worth more than crumbs. Cleaning your room, not as punishment, but so the space you fall asleep in doesn't quietly agree with the belief that you're a mess. It's laying out clothes that make you feel like you, even if no one is going to see you that day. It's picking up the guitar you abandoned, or the sketchbook, or the gym routine that once made you feel alive, and saying, I don't need an audience to justify this. These aren't productivity hacks. They're small acts of loyalty to yourself. Each one whispers, I am worth the effort. And then there are the emotional choices, the ones that hurt in a different way. Saying no to the friend who only calls when they need something, even though the loneliness makes you want to say yes to anyone. Setting boundaries with family members who talk to you in ways that make you feel small. Looking at a situationship that keeps you half-chosen and asking, if this was love, would it feel like I had to beg for it? Walking away, not because you don't care, but because you do. Sometimes choosing yourself is opening a search bar and typing therapist near me, or texting a friend. Can I be honest about something? There's nothing wrong with needing help. That doesn't make you weak. It just means you're human, and you've carried enough alone. What scares me most is how many men would rather be in quiet pain than risk being seen needing anything. Every time you make one of these choices, you're casting a quiet vote for your own worth. Not a loud, confident vote. A shaky, almost whispered one. But it still counts. You're teaching your nervous system, your mind, your heart, I am someone worth showing up for. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You're practicing being the kind of person who can receive love without disappearing. Pattern interrupt, right here. In the next 24 hours, choose one tiny act that says, I am worth showing up for. Wash your sheets. Cook one real meal. Say no once. Send one honest message. Then just notice how it feels. Not as a fix, just as a signal. A small light in the night, proving to yourself that even while you're unchosen by others, you do not have to stay unchosen by you. Redefining what makes a man lovable. And while you're doing that one small thing for yourself, there's another question that starts to whisper in the background. Even if I treat myself better, will anyone else ever really love me? Not just sleep with me, Not just text me at night when they're bored, but actually look at me and think, you. I choose you. When men ask that, we're usually handed the same checklist. Be taller. Make more money. Get bigger at the gym. Be more confident, more charming, more high status. It's not just about attraction. It starts to feel like a moral scorecard, like if you don't have those things, you're somehow doing life wrong. And the hardest part is, those metrics do move the needle for some people, so it's easy to believe they're the whole story. Are my shoulders wide enough? Is my account big enough? Is my presence loud enough? But here's what scares me most. I've sat with men who had almost all of that, and they still felt unbearably alone. They could lift 300 pounds but couldn't lift their eyes to say, please don't leave. They could buy the table, buy the trip, buy the image, and still go home to a bed that felt cold with loneliness. Not because they were unlovable, but because no one had ever taught them that love is built on quieter things. Things like reliability, emotional presence, the way you actually listen when someone is talking instead of waiting to speak. Kindness that shows up in small, boring moments. Curiosity about another human's inner world. Integrity when no one is watching. The ability to apologize without collapsing in shame, and then to actually grow. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be attractive in the obvious ways. That doesn't make you shallow. It just means you've been shown a very narrow picture of what makes a man worth loving. Think about the men you've seen who are deeply loved, not because they light up every room, but because people breathe easier around them. The father who isn't flashy but always answers the phone at 2 a.m. The friend who remembers your big day and your bad day and checks in on both. The quiet partner who doesn't post grand gestures online but never lets you feel alone in the silence of the night. They become home, not because they're perfect, but because they're safe. What if some of that is already in you? Maybe you're not the tallest, not the richest, not the loudest in the room. That doesn't make you less of a man. It just means your strengths might be hiding in places this world doesn't praise out loud. The way you notice small details, the way you care, the way you stay. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You might already be more lovable than you've ever been told. We tell boys, be a man. We rarely tell them, you are already enough to be loved. What if that sentence applied to you, right now, exactly as you are? When you feel like you've waited too long, what if that sentence applied to you, right now, exactly as you are? Not the future you with more money, more muscle, more confidence. The you who comes home to an empty place, drops his keys on the counter, and hears the sound of his own loneliness echo in the silence. This isn't just being single for a season. This is years, sometimes decades. The almost relationships that fizzled. The short flings where you cared more than they did. Or the long stretch where nothing even got off the ground. You start to feel not just alone, but unchosen. Like life kept handing out love and somehow skipped your row. What scares me most is how invisible that ache can be. You show up, you work, you joke, you lift, you help people move house, and no one knows that at night you lie there doing quiet math in your head. If I'd met someone at 25, we'd have a 10-year-old by now. You're grieving memories that never happened. Family holidays you thought you'd host. A hand you thought you'd be holding through every hard thing by now. It's not just about wanting sex or company. It's about the version of your life you were sure you'd be living at this age. The photos that aren't on your phone. The names you never got to give a child. the anniversaries that never came. And you're not just missing a person, you're mourning a timeline. And somewhere in there, another fear creeps in. Maybe you've been alone too long, too set in your ways, too used to your own space, your own routines, your own bed. Or you look at your past and think, I'm too damaged, too awkward, too old, too something. The hardest part is you start to believe that time passing is proof that love doesn't want you. There's nothing wrong with you for thinking that way. That doesn't make you desperate or weak. It just means you're human, and you've been waiting a long time without much evidence that anything will change. But waiting this long doesn't mean the story is over. It just means you're in a later chapter than you expected. People find love in the strangest, most unfairly delayed ways. A man who remarried at 52 after losing the only woman he thought he'd ever love. Two single parents who met at a kid's birthday party and built a blended family they never planned for. Friends who sat across from each other for 10 years before one day realizing the safest place had been right there all along. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You're not the only one whose story took the long way around. But I know there's a different exhaustion that comes with long-term singleness. How do you keep hoping without hating yourself for still hoping? How do you hold that tension without breaking? The hardest balance. Hope without self-blame. There's this quiet war that starts to happen inside you. One side still wants to believe, still wants to imagine someone choosing you at night when the room goes dark. The other side is tired. Tired of replaying the same hope. Tired of feeling embarrassed that you still care this much about love when everyone else seems to have moved on or moved in with someone. The hardest part is that both sides feel honest. There's the version of you that remembers how good it felt the last time you let yourself believe. And there's the version of you that remembers how hard you crashed when it didn't work out. So you start bargaining with yourself. Do I hope a little less? Do I pretend I don't want anything? Do I numb out so I don't look so desperate? What scares me most in my own head is how quickly delay turns into a verdict. Not, my path is different, but if it hasn't happened by now, it must mean something is wrong with me. Not, I haven't met my person yet, but everyone can see I'm unchosen and they're too polite to say it. The story shifts from circumstances to character, from timing to identity. And when you're a man, the silence around that hurts more. You're told to focus on work, on the gym, on being useful. You're told affection will come later, that needing reassurance is weak. So when the years pass and no one really stays, you don't just feel alone, you feel defective. You don't say, I'm lonely. You say, I must not be enough. There's also that fear of looking foolish. You imagine people scrolling past your life, seeing you still single, still trying, still swiping, still open, and you hear this fake voice in your head. He still believes in love. After all that, you worry your friends pity you. You worry women you've dated swap stories about you. Oh, you worry your hope is a punchline. But there's nothing wrong with still wanting to be loved. That doesn't make you pathetic. It just means you're still human. It's not just about romance. It's about wanting somewhere to put your softness without it being used against you. Wanting someone who doesn't treat your tenderness as a flaw you need to outgrow. So here's the reframe I'm learning. Hope doesn't have to mean denial. You can see the odds, see the patterns, see the pain, and still leave a window open. Hope can be a quiet rebellion against the part of you that wants to become numb and cynical. Not, Everything will work out soon, but even if it takes longer, I refuse to treat myself as unlovable while I wait. Pattern interrupt for a second. Imagine your younger self sitting on the edge of his bed, the first night he realized he might be alone for a long time. Would you walk in and tell him, "Give up, stop wanting love, it's embarrassing now"? Or would you sit beside him in that small, scared silence and say, "You're not behind, you're not forgotten. Keep a small, gentle hope alive for you. I'll help you carry it," because learning to hope without self-blame starts there, with how you talk to that boy, and whether you're willing to become the man who doesn't abandon him again. You are not the exceptions, you've survived. And here's where it gets confusing for you, for that boy, for the man you are now. He didn't just remember who left. His brain started writing laws. One breakup at 16, one girl who cheated at 20, one divorce at 30. And suddenly it isn't. That hurt. It's, "This is how it goes for me. This is who I am to love." The hardest part is, your brain is just trying to keep you safe. It's wired to generalize. Touch the stove once, it burns, it learns. Hot equals danger. Get rejected a few times. Get ghosted after you finally opened up. Watch someone choose someone better, and your mind quietly updates the code. Opening equals danger. Wanting equals humiliation. Hope equals pain. Not, "Those were painful experiences, but this is my destiny." You start collecting evidence without even noticing. The girl who said you were too nice. The one who said she wasn't ready, then moved in with someone else. The matches on an app that never turn into dates. Each one becomes another exhibit in the case against you. Am I too quiet? Too much? Not enough? You don't just remember what happened. You turn it into a prophecy. But there's a difference between patterns and fate. Patterns can show you where you're wounded, where your choices keep circling the same kind of unavailable person, where your standards collapse the moment someone finally pays attention. Destiny would mean you're locked in, that nothing you heal, nothing you learn, nothing you become could ever change the ending. And that's not true. That doesn't make you naive for wanting more. It just means the story so far is not the whole book. What scares me most is how quickly men move from curiosity to condemnation. Instead of, "Why do I keep ending up with people who can't choose me fully?" it becomes, "I'm unlovable. I'm the common denominator. I'm the problem." Instead of, "What have my wounds and circumstances shaped in me?" it becomes, "There's something wrong with me that love keeps seeing and walking away from." What if you softened that? Not to avoid responsibility, but to tell the truth more gently. What if the questions became, what did I learn about love from parents who couldn't say, "I'm proud of you"? How has porn or performance or pretending I don't care numbed me out? Who was I trying to impress when I abandoned myself? Curiosity doesn't erase the pain. It just stops handing it the microphone. And remember this, the man watching this is not the boy who was first rejected. You're not frozen at 18. You have survived nights you thought would break you. You've learned words for feelings you used to only know as anger or silence. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. The fact that you're even asking, "Can this change?" means you've already changed. Your story is not just the sum of who left. It's also the sum of who you kept becoming after they did. And the next part of this is learning how to let that man, not your old exceptions, decide who you'll let close. Letting go of performances that don't fit anymore. So when I say, let that man decide who you'll let close, I'm also saying something harder. You can't keep being who you were just to feel chosen. Because if you're honest, you've had costumes. The tough guy who never flinches. The always-on joker who keeps the whole room laughing so no one notices the loneliness in his own chest. The overachiever who stacks degrees, promotions, and plates at the gym because success feels safer than saying, please stay. The emotionally numb one who shrugs and says, it is what it is, when it's actually breaking him. Chet, those weren't random. They were armor. Maybe you learned early that softness got mocked, so you became hard. Maybe your father only praised you when you won, so you became the man who always has to win. Maybe the first person you loved left right after you opened up, so you taught your face not to move when your heart does. Not because you're cold, but because being unchosen in your full self felt unbearable. The hardest part is admitting those performances worked for a while. They did protect you. They helped you belong. They got you some form of love, or at least attention, or at least safety. When you made everyone laugh, they kept you around. When you stayed quiet about your needs, no one accused you of being too much. When you pretended you didn't care, rejection stung a little less on the surface. So of course it's confusing when the same roles start to suffocate you. When the tough guy can't say, I'm not okay. When the joker can't have a serious conversation without feeling naked. When the overachiever hits every goal and still feels alone in the silence of the night. It's not just about changing habits. It's about grieving identities that were built to keep you alive. Because letting go of a persona can feel like a small death. You might miss him, even if he was never the real you. You might stand in front of the mirror and wonder, if I'm not the strong one, the funny one, the successful one, then who am I? And will anyone stay for that man? What scares me most is how many men never ask that out loud. They just keep performing until something inside goes quiet. There's nothing wrong with you if this feels messy. That doesn't make you weak. It just means you're human enough to outgrow what once saved you, so you start small. One honest feeling instead of a joke. One I don't know instead of pretending you've got it handled. One I'm scared this won't work instead of going numb. You let yourself be quiet on a night out instead of entertaining everyone, and you notice who still comes to sit beside you. And this is where everything begins to shift. If you stopped performing for love, if you laid the armor down for even a moment, what kind of love might finally recognize you? Men, softness, and the future you. Maybe this is the part where you start to imagine him. The man you could be if you didn't have to spend all your energy holding the mask in place. The version of you who can sit on the edge of his bed at night and feel his own loneliness rise in his chest and not run from it or drown it in noise. He doesn't flinch away from his pain, and he doesn't flinch away from someone else's either. He can hold his own tears and a partner's shaking shoulders in the same arms. He works hard. You still see him up early, showing up, providing, trying. But he also knows how to rest without calling himself weak. He can say, I'm tired, and put the phone down. He can say, I need help, without rehearsing it 10 times in his head. He can whisper, I need you, to someone he loves and not feel wrong for wanting to be held. That doesn't make you needy. It just means you're human. The hardest part is, this softness doesn't cancel his strength. It deepens it. Anyone can shut down after being hurt. Anyone can say, I don't care, and build another wall. And what scares me most is how normal that has become for men. Real courage is staying open when it would be easier to disappear. Not reckless with your heart, but honest about it. Not spilling everything to everyone, but refusing to pretend you don't feel anything at all. In love, this future you moves differently. He doesn't beg for scraps of attention, checking his phone all night for a half-hearted reply. He also doesn't pretend he's fine with casual when his heart wants something real. He can walk away from the situationships that keep him unchosen, not because he's cold, but because he's finally on his own side. And he can lean into what heals him, the person who texts back, the friend who notices his silence, the partner who asks, "How's your heart?" and waits for the real answer. This man is not a fantasy, and he isn't built in some big, dramatic moment. He grows slowly, through tiny acts of honesty with yourself. One truthful journal entry instead of, "I'm fine." One kind thought about your own body when you catch yourself in the mirror. One conversation where you let a friend see you sad instead of changing the subject. It's not just about healing your past. It's about practicing being seen now. Pattern interrupt for a second. If you stopped performing right now and asked yourself quietly, what would it feel like to be loved exactly as I am without the performance? What comes up? Do you feel numb, hopeful, angry? Do you want to cry? There's nothing wrong with any of it. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. This future you is already in you, and in the next part, I want to show you how he starts speaking up in your real, everyday life. You have already survived so much without love if you really sat with that future version of you, the one who feels loved without performing. Another question might rise up behind your ribs. How have you made it this far without him? Think about what you've already survived. The breakup you never really talked about, where you went to work the next morning acting fine. The betrayal you swallowed because you didn't want to seem dramatic. The family conflict you kept mediating, trying to be the steady one while your own chest was burning. The nights you stared at your bank account wondering how you're going to make it, and still showed up for everyone else. How many storms have you walked through in silence? Men are taught to keep moving. Not because we don't feel, but because we're told feelings don't fix anything. And so you carried heartbreak into the gym, into the office, into group chats where you made jokes instead of saying, "I'm not okay." You pushed through anxiety, through the weight of being a provider, through those dark nights when your mind went to places you'd never admit out loud. You did all of that often without a single person asking, "Who's holding you?" The hardest part is, this has been normalized for you. You're praised for being strong, for not crying, for handling it. But doing life without consistent emotional support is not normal. It's not how the human nervous system was built. It is a heavy, heavy lift to go years without someone regularly saying, "I see you. I'm proud of you. You're allowed to be tired." And yet you kept going anyway. And what scares me most is how easy it is for a man to believe this is just how it has to be. Look at what you've built while feeling unchosen. Maybe it's not perfect. Maybe your room is messy, your schedule is chaotic, your bank account isn't where you want it. But you are still here. You've held jobs, passed exams, paid bills, showed up for family, cracked jokes with friends, even on days you felt completely alone. That doesn't make you weak for wanting more. It just means your capacity is already proven in the harshest conditions. You didn't just survive heartbreak. You survived loneliness. You survived those 3 a.m. thoughts that whispered, maybe no one will ever really choose me. You survived being the strong one, the quiet one, the one who never gets asked if he feels lovable. There's nothing wrong with you for being tired, and you have been doing the work of 2 people, the one who lives the life and the one who comforts him. No wonder you're exhausted. So what if the same strength that kept you alive wasn't only meant for enduring the absence of love, but for allowing love to stay when it finally comes? Not just romantic love, but the friend who actually checks in, the partner who listens, the version of you that offers himself gentleness instead of shame. It's not just about surviving anymore. It's about learning not to push away what you've secretly needed all along. If you could carry all of this without feeling fully loved, imagine who you might become when love is finally allowed to sit beside you and not leave. In the next part, I want to talk about what it looks like when a man who has survived on emptiness starts to believe he's allowed to feel full. You are not alone in feeling unlovable. When I say a man who has survived on emptiness, I'm not talking about some rare, tragic exception. I'm talking about you and me and more men than you would ever guess. Men who look fine in the daytime, who joke at work, who lift heavy at the gym, and then lie awake at night staring at the ceiling wondering, is there anyone I can actually talk to? Because the numbers are brutal. In some surveys, 1 in 5 men say they have no close friends at all. Many more quietly admit they don't have a single person they feel safe telling the real story to. Not their fears, not their shame, not the moments they feel unchosen and replaceable. The hardest part is, this isn't rare. This is normal enough to be called research. And yet, when you're sitting in that silence, it doesn't feel normal, does it? It feels personal. It feels like proof that something is wrong with you. You don't think, men are lonely. You think, I'm lonely. I'm the one no one picked. You scroll past smiling couples and loud friend groups, and you start asking those spiraling questions. Am I too quiet? Too much? Not enough? What scares me most is how many men carry the same question in secret. Am I lovable or just useful? Useful at paying bills. Useful at fixing things. Useful at listening to everyone else's pain. But when the night comes and the phone doesn't light up unless someone needs something, you start to wonder if anyone would choose you for your heart, not your function. It's not just about romance, and it's about being a son who never heard "I'm proud of you," a friend who's always the helper but never the one helped, a partner who shows up but feels emotionally alone in the relationship. That doesn't make you weak. That doesn't make you dramatic. It just means you're human, and you've been trained to hide it. Silence is what twists the knife. Because every man is taught, in his own way, don't need too much, don't feel too deeply, don't say it out loud. So you armor up, you act fine. And you never see that the man on the train, the man at the gym, the man watching this in another city, is sitting with the same sting in his chest at the same sentences. You think you're the only one. You're not. There's nothing wrong with you for wanting to be held, to be reassured, to be chosen, and not just tolerated. Right now, other men are hearing these words with their jaw clenched, eyes burning, pretending they're not about to cry. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You are part of an invisible brotherhood that has never been properly named. If this many of you are carrying the same ache in silence, what happens if even a few of you stop pretending? What might shift if you started saying the quiet parts out loud to yourself first, and then to each other. And what if the moment one man finally speaks, the whole story of what it means to be a man begins to crack open? If no one has said this to you, let me say it now. So let me do something that almost no one does for men. Let me look you in the eye through this screen and say the thing you've been waiting your whole life to hear, and also trying very hard not to need. You are not unlovable. You are not a mistake. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. I know there's a part of you that flinched when I said that. The part that immediately pulled up the evidence file, the messages left unread, the dates that never turned into relationships, the childhood where no one really asked how you were, just if you were behaving. The nights you went to bed in silence, not because you wanted to be strong, but because there was no one it felt safe to be soft with. That part of you is smart. It has been paying attention. It knows how many times you felt unchosen. It's not just about romance. It's the friend groups where you were always the reliable one, but never the first one invited. The family that expected you to be the rock, but never the one who needed holding. The hardest part is, and your mind turned all of that into proof that something must be wrong with you. What scares me most is how convincing that proof can feel at 2 a.m. When you're lying in the dark, scrolling through other people's highlight reels, telling yourself, if I were truly lovable, wouldn't someone have stayed by now? Not because you're dramatic, but because loneliness plus silence breeds stories, and your brain has been writing the harshest version for years. So let me be stubborn on your behalf. Your worth is not up for debate. Not with me, not with your ex, not with your father, not with the voice in your head that only ever sounds disappointed. Your existence is already enough reason to be worthy of care and love. You don't earn that by providing, by performing, by fixing everyone else's life first. And you had it the moment you arrived here as a small, loud, inconvenient, beautiful human. There's nothing wrong with you because you still want to be loved, held, chosen, and seen. That doesn't make you needy. It just means you're honest about what you were built for. Wanting that is not something you're supposed to grow out of. It's something you grow around. You build a life, a spine, a set of standards around that longing. You make space for it. You honor it instead of shaming it back into the dark. Pattern interrupt. If you can, pause this video for a moment. Take your phone, or a scrap of paper, or just your breath, and write or whisper one sentence you wish someone had said to you about being lovable. Say it in the second person, to yourself. You are, and finish it. Let it sound awkward. Let it sound wrong. Let it be heard, even if only by you. Because this is where it starts. Not when someone else finally chooses you, but when you stop abandoning yourself in the moments you most want to be chosen. Carrying. This forward, a gentle recap. So if we zoom out for a second, what have we really been talking about this whole time? Not just dating, not just apps or texts or mixed signals. We've been tracing that feeling that hits you at night, when the room goes quiet and you start wondering if you were born to be the extra, the background character, the one always a little unchosen. We started there, in that late-night loneliness that makes the ceiling feel closer and your chest feel heavier. Not because you're dramatic, but because when no one is there, the silence starts sounding like an answer. Am I unlovable? Am I wrong somehow? Or am I the only one who feels this alone in a world that looks so paired up? From there we went backwards, into the old scripts you were handed. the father who was distant or harsh or absent, the parent who only praised performance, never softness, the culture that told you to be strong, not tender, useful, not needy. What scares me most is how early boys learn that needing love is something to hide. You don't stop needing it. You just stop asking. We named the distorted mirrors too. Porn that makes bodies into products, social media that turns affection into a scoreboard, dating apps that make connection feel disposable. When you stare into those long enough, you start confusing loneliness with unlovability, timing with rejection, quiet seasons with permanent verdicts. So we began to separate things, being alone right now from being always alone. Not chosen yet from unchoosable. Someone saying not now from never you. The hardest part is believing that difference when your phone is dry and your bed is cold. But it matters. It's not just about what's happening outside you. It's about the story you tell yourself while it's happening. We also drew a line between performance and authenticity. The version of you that hustles, entertains, achieves, holds it together so no one sees you shake. And the version of you that just wants to say, please stay, please choose me, even when I'm not impressive. Wanting that doesn't make you weak. That doesn't make you less of a man. It just means you're human and honest about it. Through all of this, I've been trying to say one thing clearly. Your desire for love is valid. Your pain makes sense. There's nothing wrong with you for wanting to be held, to be reassured, to be someone's first choice. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You are in the middle of a story that is still unfolding, and you are not resourceless while you wait. You have the possibility of real male friendships, the kind where you can admit you're scared and no one laughs. You have the capacity for vulnerability, even if it trembles out of you at first. You have the ability to grow a more secure attachment, to practice self-compassion, to choose yourself in 100 small ways. Going to therapy, texting a friend first, resting instead of punishing yourself, speaking to yourself with a little more gentleness than you did last year. So as we carry this forward, the question shifts. Not, am I lovable, as a yes or no verdict handed down from the outside, but how gently can I treat myself while I keep finding out in real time that I am? Can you stay kind to yourself in the silence? Can you hold your own hand through the nights that feel longest? Can you let this be a process, not a pass/fail exam? Because love is not just something that happens to you one day. It's something you practice with yourself while you're still waiting for someone else to arrive. Speaking your quiet sentence out loud, CTA. So I want to try something with you. Not later, not when you feel braver, but right now, while the room is quiet and the night feels heavier than usual. You've spent so much of your life not saying certain sentences out loud. Not because you're weak, but because somewhere you learned that needing love makes you less of a man. What scares me most is how many men carry those sentences to the grave. So let's not wait that long. I want you to take one of them and put it in the comments. It can be anonymous. No name, no face. Just one sentence you've never said out loud about feeling unloved or unworthy. I feel invisible next to my friends. I'm scared no one will ever choose me if I stopped performing. I don't know what it feels like to be hugged without earning it. It doesn't have to be poetic. It just has to be honest. The hardest part is starting with that first word, pushing it through the shame and the training and the silence. But once it's there, you'll see something you're not expecting. You're not the only one. When you're done, I want you to scroll slowly. Read what other men have written, not to measure whose pain is worse, not to decide who has the right to feel lonely. This isn't a competition in suffering. It's a mirror. It's proof that the story in your head, I'm the only one who feels this unchosen, this behind, this wrong, isn't the truth. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You're just seeing in real time how human this is. And then, a second step. Think of one man in your life, a friend, a brother, a father, a partner. The one who jokes his way out of anything real, or the one who looks fine on the outside, but never says much about what's going on inside. Send him this video. But don't just forward a link and disappear into the background. Add one sentence of your own. You are loved even when you're not performing. It's not just about sharing content. It's about interrupting the script he's been handed since he was a boy. There's nothing wrong with needing that sentence. That doesn't make you weak or dependent. It just means you're human, and so is he. These tiny acts, one comment, one message, one honest line, are how the silent rules begin to change. Not through big speeches, but through quiet, consistent truth-telling between men who are tired of pretending they don't need love. You don't know yet who will one day be grateful that you stayed, through the lonely nights, through the doubt, through the waiting. Let's find out whose life your honesty touches. And then I want to show you what happens when a man finally believes he is worth that love. For the night you watch this again. Through big speeches, but through quiet, consistent truth-telling between men who are tired of pretending they don't need love. And you don't know yet who will one day be grateful that you stayed, through the lonely nights, through the doubt, through the waiting. Let's find out whose life your honesty touches. And then I want to show you what happens when a man finally believes he is worth that love. And if you're here again on another night, maybe months from now, maybe years, replaying these words because the ache came back, I see you. The room looks the same, the silence feels the same, but somehow the loneliness hits different when it returns after you thought you were past it. The hardest part is that second wave. Not the first breakup, but the way a random song, a story, or a name on your screen can pull you right back into being unchosen. You start wondering, did I really heal? Did I make it all up? Am I always going to end up here? Listen to me. There's nothing wrong with you for needing to hear this again. Healing isn't a straight line. It bends, it circles, it revisits old streets in your mind. Coming back to comfort doesn't mean you failed. It just means you're human. And tonight your heart is a little more tender than usual. What scares me most is how fast old stories try to rewrite themselves when you're tired. One unanswered message, one date that fades out, one breakup that still stings, and suddenly your brain whispers, "See, this is proof. You're not meant to be chosen." Not because it's true, but because it's familiar. So let's slow everything down. Feel your feet on the floor or against the bed. Notice the weight of your body being held up by something that isn't asking you to perform. Let your shoulders drop. Take a slow breath in through your nose. Hold it for a moment and let it go. Again, you are here, in this room, in this body, in this exact night of your life. It's not just about getting over someone. It's about remembering, again and again, that your worth did not change since the last time you watched this. No breakup has the authority to erase it. No silence from someone you wanted. No disappointment. No, it's not you, it's me. No ghosting. no almost love that never became real. You're not behind. You're not forgotten. You are not living some wrong version of life because love hasn't stayed yet. You don't stop being worthy when someone leaves. You don't become lovable only when someone arrives. You are the constant. Their presence or absence is the variable. So if you're here on a future night, staring at the same ceiling, and wondering if anything has actually changed, let this be your reminder. You have. Maybe the pain feels familiar, but you are not the same man who pressed play the first time. You've survived more endings. You've learned more about what your heart can't live without. You've kept going. You are not unlovable. That doesn't make the loneliness less sharp, but it does make it wrong when it says you're the problem. You are a man with a heart that still wants to be held. And that, in itself, is something profoundly worth staying for. Stay for the night after this one. Stay for the version of you who will one day be glad you did,